The underwater camera stopped moving. On the monitors, 30 feet beneath the Mediterranean surface, Bob Ballard, the man who found the Titanic, watched something impossible materialize from the murk. For 2,000 years, historians believed Cleopatra's final resting place had vanished into legend. What his robot was transmitting from the depths of this forgotten harbor would force them to reconsider everything. Off the coast of Egypt, just west of Alexandria, lies a mystery that has consumed archaeologists for millennia. Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt, lover of Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, the woman who changed the course of empires, vanished from history after her death in 30 BCE. Ancient sources describe her burial alongside Mark Antony in a tomb near a temple to Isis. Then, silence. The location was lost, swallowed by time, earthquakes, and the rising Mediterranean Sea. For decades, researchers focused their search around Alexandria, where Cleopatra ruled from her magnificent palace. But Dr. Kathleen Martinez, a Dominican archaeologist, made a radical proposal. What if everyone had been looking in the wrong place? Her theory centered on Taposiris Magna, an ancient temple complex 28 miles west of Alexandria. The name itself means Great Tomb of Osiris. If Cleopatra fashioned herself as the living embodiment of Isis, Martinez reasoned, where better to be buried than beside the temple dedicated to Isis's husband? The problem? Much of the ancient coastline now lies underwater, transformed by earthquakes and subsidence over 2 millennia. Anything that once stood at the water's edge, including ports, harbors, and entire districts, had sunk beneath the waves. To find Cleopatra's tomb, they would first need to explore what remained of her world below the surface. In 2024, Martinez assembled an extraordinary team. She reached out to Dr. Robert Ballard, the legendary oceanographer whose underwater robots had located the Titanic in 1985, discovered hydrothermal vents teeming with unknown lifeforms, and mapped more of the ocean floor than almost anyone alive. If anyone could navigate the murky, debris-filled waters near Taposiris Magna, it was Ballard. The expedition faced immediate challenges. The Mediterranean near this coast is not the crystal-clear water of tropical reefs. Sediment from the Nile Delta, stirred by currents and storms, reduces visibility to mere feet. Traditional diving would be dangerous and inefficient. Instead, Ballard deployed remotely operated vehicles, sophisticated underwater robots equipped with high-definition cameras, sonar mapping systems, and articulated arms capable of gently moving debris without damaging fragile artifacts. The remotely operated vehicles descended through the clouded water, their lights cutting through the gloom. The seafloor near Taposiris Magna had never been systematically surveyed. Previous expeditions had focused on the temple complex itself, perched on dry land. But Martinez's research suggested that what they really needed to find lay submerged in the ancient port, the port that would have served Cleopatra's Egypt, the gateway between her kingdom and the Mediterranean world. What they found in those first hours seemed promising, but hardly unprecedented. Scattered pottery shards, fragments of worked stone. Their cameras transmitted images of amphoras, the large ceramic vessels ancient civilizations used to transport wine, olive oil, and grain across the sea. These were standard archaeological finds for any ancient Mediterranean port. But then, the remotely operated vehicle's sonar began detecting something larger. The team adjusted the remotely operated vehicle's course, guiding it toward an anomaly in the seafloor readings. As the vehicle approached, its lights revealed a massive shape emerging from the sediment. Stone. Carefully cut stone. The remotely operated vehicle moved closer, its cameras struggling to capture the full scope of what lay before them. An anchor. But not just any anchor, a colossal carved stone anchor, the kind that would have moored the largest ships in Cleopatra's navy. The weight alone suggested vessels of enormous size, the kind reserved for royal fleets or major trading expeditions. The remotely operated vehicle's manipulator arm carefully brushed away encrusted marine growth, revealing carved symbols beneath. Egyptian hieroglyphs. The discovery accelerated from there. Within meters of the first anchor, the vehicle's cameras captured another, then another. The harbor was littered with them, evidence of a substantial port facility, a place where dozens of ships could dock simultaneously. This was not some forgotten fishing village. This was infrastructure befitting a major center of power. "We need to go deeper," Martinez instructed the remotely operated vehicle operators. The vehicle adjusted its position, moving toward the heart of what the sonar suggested was the ancient harbor's main dock. That's when the cameras captured something that made the entire team go silent. Emerging from the sediment, partially buried but unmistakable, stretched a floor. Not a natural rock formation, a constructed, deliberate floor. The vehicle's lights revealed polished stone tiles fitted together with remarkable precision. Some were cracked by age and earthquakes, but the pattern remained clear. This had been a paved surface, perhaps a dock or a ceremonial platform, deliberately built at the water's edge. But floors do not float. They are anchored to something. The vehicle tilted its cameras upward. Rising from that submerged floor, covered in 2,000 years of marine growth but still defiant, stood columns, towering columns. The vehicle's measurements calculated their dimensions, over 15 feet tall, carved from single blocks of stone, their capitals still showing traces of the ornate Egyptian designs that once decorated them. These were not simple support pillars. These were architectural statements, the kind of monumental construction reserved for temples, palaces, or tombs of extraordinary importance. The footage transmitted to the surface showed something that should not exist according to conventional archaeology. The historical record mentioned no major port facility at Taposiris Magna. Ancient sources described the temple complex but said nothing about a harbor of this scale. Yet here it was, preserved beneath the Mediterranean. A massive, sophisticated port installation that had served one of the ancient world's most powerful locations. Dr. Ballard's voice crackled through the communications system, his decades of underwater discovery unable to hide his excitement. In 40 years of deep-sea archaeology, you learn to manage expectations. But this is unprecedented for this site. We are looking at evidence of infrastructure that matches what you would find at Alexandria itself. The team directed the vehicle to conduct a systematic survey. Over the following hours, the vehicle mapped an area spanning more than 200 meters along the ancient coastline. The discoveries multiplied: more anchors, dozens of amphoras in various states of preservation, carved stones that had clearly fallen from larger structures, and most tantalizing, the remains of what appeared to be additional buildings, their foundations still visible beneath the sediment. But it was the columns that changed everything. Their size, their placement, their obvious importance spoke to something beyond simple commerce. Ancient Egyptian ports were functional, certainly, but structures of this magnitude carried religious and political significance. They announced importance. They declared power. The archaeological team analyzing the footage noted something else: the architectural style. The columns displayed characteristics consistent with Ptolemaic Egypt, the dynasty that ruled from Alexander the Great's conquest until Cleopatra's death. More specifically, design elements suggested construction during the 1st century BCE, the exact period when Cleopatra VII ruled Egypt. Marine archaeologists examining the amphoras made another critical observation. Several bore markings indicating they came from wine-producing regions known to have traded extensively with Egypt during Cleopatra's reign. Carbon dating of organic materials embedded in the ceramics would later confirm a production date range from 50 to 30 BCE, the final 2 decades of Cleopatra's life. The implications began cascading through the archaeological community. If Taposiris Magna possessed a port of this sophistication during Cleopatra's reign, it was not the provincial temple outpost previously assumed. It was a destination of genuine importance, a place worthy of royal attention, a site that Cleopatra herself would have known, visited, and perhaps chose for reasons history has forgotten. The submerged port discovery has fundamentally altered the equation for researchers hunting Cleopatra's tomb. For decades, the search concentrated on Alexandria, where logic suggested Egypt's ruler would be buried in her capital city. But Alexandria has been continuously inhabited for over 2,000 years. Modern buildings sit atop ancient ones. The harbor has been dredged, reclaimed, and rebuilt countless times. Finding an intact royal tomb there would be like finding a needle in a city-sized haystack. Taposiris Magna offers something Alexandria cannot: relative preservation. The temple complex sits partially excavated but largely unexplored. Much of the ancient site lies beneath agricultural land protected by layers of earth from the looting and destruction that ravaged more accessible locations. And now, with the underwater port mapped, researchers possess a critical piece of the puzzle they lacked before. Ancient Egyptian royal tombs weren't isolated structures. They existed within complexes, temples, ports, administrative buildings, all interconnected and serving the cult of the deceased pharaoh. What Ballard and Martinez found underwater provides evidence that Taposiris Magna possessed the infrastructure to support such a complex. The port could have brought worshippers, priests, and offerings to honor Cleopatra and Mark Antony. The monumental columns suggest ceremonial importance beyond simple trade. Dr. Martinez's team has already identified several unexplored chambers within the temple complex itself, areas where ground-penetrating radar suggests the presence of sealed spaces. Before the port discovery, investigating these chambers seemed like a long shot, interesting archaeology perhaps, but unlikely to yield Cleopatra's tomb. Now each of those chambers demands serious attention. The international archaeological community has taken notice. National Geographic, which documented several major 2025 discoveries, including this expedition, has highlighted the Taposiris Magna port as one of the year's most significant finds. The Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, which must approve all excavation permits, has indicated support for expanded investigations at the site. But questions outnumber answers. Why did ancient sources fail to mention a port of this size at Taposiris Magna? Was it deliberately obscured, perhaps to protect Cleopatra's tomb location? Or did later historians simply not know about it, the port having sunk and been forgotten before they wrote their accounts? The columns themselves pose mysteries. Their exact purpose remains unclear. Were they part of a dockside temple, a ceremonial gateway, a monumental tomb entrance that once stood at the water's edge? Ongoing analysis of their decorative elements may provide answers, but marine incrustation has obscured many details. And the most tantalizing question of all is what else lies beneath the sediment. The survey covered only a fraction of the ancient coastline. Ballard's remotely operated vehicles mapped the most prominent structures, but countless smaller artifacts and potentially major buildings remain buried, waiting for future expeditions. What began as a theoretical challenge to conventional archaeology, Martinez's insistence that everyone had been searching in the wrong place, has transformed into one of the most compelling tomb hunts in modern history. The submerged port near Taposiris Magna proves this site held far greater importance during Cleopatra's reign than anyone suspected. Those towering columns rising from the Mediterranean depths after 2,000 years stand as silent witnesses to a world we are only beginning to rediscover. Bob Ballard, whose underwater robots have rewritten history before, believes the best discoveries at Taposiris Magna still await. He noted that the team had mapped less than 30% of the potential harbor area, and that based on what they had found, he would be shocked if there were not more significant structures waiting to be documented. Dr. Martinez, meanwhile, continues her meticulous excavation of the temple complex itself, armed now with critical knowledge about the site's ancient infrastructure. Each new chamber she investigates carries the possibility of the discovery that has eluded archaeologists for millennia, the final resting place of Cleopatra VII, the woman who captivated emperors and changed the course of civilizations. The Egyptian government has announced plans for additional underwater surveys in 2026, using even more advanced imaging technology to peer beneath the sediment without disturbing it. Researchers from universities across the globe have requested permission to study the artifacts already recovered, hoping their analysis might reveal clues to what else the harbor holds. 2,000 years ago, Cleopatra chose to die on her own terms rather than be paraded through Rome as a captive. She controlled her destiny to the very end and even chose the location of her eternal rest. She ensured that history would remember her, but kept her final secret closely guarded. Now, thanks to a robot exploring the depths of a forgotten harbor, we might finally be closing in on the answer. If Cleopatra's tomb lies somewhere near Taposiris Magna, if those columns once marked the approach to her final monument, then one of archaeology's greatest mysteries may soon be solved. But even if the search continues for years more, the underwater port itself has already rewritten our understanding of this ancient site. What other secrets are waiting in the depths, preserved by the same seas that once carried Cleopatra's ships? What else did she leave behind for us to discover? The Mediterranean keeps its secrets, but it is starting to give them up. If you found this discovery as fascinating as we did, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more archaeological mysteries. The ancient world has more secrets than we ever imagined. We are just beginning to uncover them.